What's going on, everyone? My name is Jasmine. On today's episode of the Slain Project, we're going to be talking about the 2005 murder of Amber Redman. She was taken from a bar by a sexual predator, and she was missing for 3 years before her body was found. There were a lot of rumors within the community, and a lot of people knew who did this to her and where she was buried, but nobody came forward to the police. Don't forget to check out my other videos, and if you want to see more videos on missing and murdered Indigenous people, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. Now let's get right into it. Amber Redman was born on January 30th, 1986, to her parents Gwenda Uzakapi and Art Redman. She was a member of the Standing Buffalo Dakota First Nation in Saskatchewan, but her mother's side of the family was originally from Aberdeen, South Dakota, with close ties on the Spirit Lake Reservation. Amber's mother, grandfather, and great-grandma were residential school survivors. When Amber's mother, Gwenda, was younger, she spent a brief period of time in a foster home. When her grandmother found out, she came and picked Gwenda and her siblings up to come stay with her. Gwenda's grandmother was a strong, knowledgeable, and resourceful woman. Gwenda has fond memories of being raised by her and recalls how she could whip up large meals out of nothing. After Gwenda grew up and moved out on her own, she would take her family to her grandmother's house every Sunday, and they would all help prepare a Sunday dinner. And because of this, Amber was raised with a traditional upbringing and a close family circle. Amber was a fancy dancer, and she was the junior princess for the Standing Buffalo First Nation when she was only 12 years old. She was also a pipe girl for the Sundance, and this brought a great sense of pride to Amber and her family. Amber was eventually honored by being given her Dakota name, and it is translated to Red Star Woman. Amber attended the Burt Fox Community High School in Fort Qu'Appelle. She was a quiet student and never caused any problems at school. She enjoyed playing basketball and volleyball and dreamed of becoming a teacher or a police officer. In high school, she met and fell in love with a fellow student named Cody Iron Eagle. Amber loved being a part of a large family and wanted to do the same with her own family. She told her mother Gwenda that she wanted to have 9 children with Cody. In 2005, Amber was 19 and lived in Fort Qu'Appelle, Saskatchewan with her mother and 2 brothers, Bevan and Drayden. Amber had recently won $1,500 at bingo and bought herself a car. Amber was an independent person, so when she brought the car home, she began doing repairs and maintenance herself. Working hard and being independent was part of who Amber was, and it told a great deal about her character and how well she was raised. On Thursday, July 14th, 2005, Gwenda saw her daughter for the last time. Gwenda was a social worker and was leaving for work. She told Amber that she would see her later. But by the time Gwenda made it home after work, Amber had already left the house. Amber had gotten paid on this day for babysitting, and later that day, she went out for pizza with her aunt and her family. When Amber was done eating, her cousin Tommy had stopped by to pick her up because she was not taking her car out that night. The cousins would go to Trapper's Bar located at the Country Squire Inn and meet up with Amber's boyfriend. While there, they began to play pool, have some drinks, and enjoy each other's company. As the night wore on, Amber would appear to be very intoxicated. When later questioned, the waitresses at the bar stated that they had only served Amber 2 drinks, but she was reported to have fell down 3 times. This bit of information has led some people to think that Amber had been drugged at some point during the night. As time at the bar rolled on, Amber began to argue with her boyfriend Cody, and he would eventually leave by himself in his own car. Her cousin Tommy had gone to use the restroom, and when he came out, Amber was nowhere to be found. Tommy looked around a bit, and upon looking in his car, he noticed that Amber's purse was inside, and he assumed she was somewhere nearby. He searched the surrounding area again, and there was still no sign of her. He soon realized that Amber still had the keys to his car, and he could not leave. Tommy waited around a bit and then had to call his mom to give him a ride home. It was later discovered that Amber was last seen in the parking lot of Trapper's Bar between 2 or 2:30 a.m. on Friday, July 15th, talking with two men who were driving a gray dark sedan. Her mother testified at Canada's MMIW inquiry and would say that Amber was lured out to the parking lot by being told her boyfriend was fighting with someone. Later in the morning on Friday, Amber's boyfriend called Gwenda to ask her if her daughter made it home. He explained what had happened at the bar and that he and Amber had an argument before he left. Gwenda related to the troubles that young couples go through, and she told Cody that maybe Amber just needed time to cool off. Saturday and Sunday went by with no word from Amber. Cody was growing increasingly worried, but Gwenda still thought that maybe Amber was still mad at Cody and avoiding him. Because Amber was so strong and independent, Gwenda assumed that Amber was okay and just was taking a break from her boyfriend. On this same weekend, the Yellow Quill powwow was going on, and Amber surely would have attended, but nobody had seen her there. When Monday, July 18th came around, Amber's boyfriend was panicked. He called the police to report Amber is missing. Cody called Gwenda at work to inform her that he filed a missing persons report. Gwenda was taken back and reflected on everything that was going on. She was shocked and could not believe that this was happening. She was so certain that Amber would eventually make it home. She immediately called the police and offered any additional information she had about Amber. Afterwards, she went home and went to the sweat lodge to offer up prayers and gain strength to help her family through this difficult time. A family meeting was called and they decided that they would conduct a search because the police were not actively pursuing Amber's whereabouts. Gwenda phoned the police to tell them this, and they offered to join and provide any help that they could. A search plan and supplies were gathered for the search that began on Wednesday, July 20th, 2005. Hundreds of local volunteers, neighbors from nearby First Nations, and the RCMP were out searching. The search party scoured every inch of their search area on foot, ATV, and search dogs were used. While this was going on, Gwenda was devastated. She stayed in her room and thought about ending it all for herself. Community elders came to her aid and advised her that she needed to stay strong and continue on for the rest of her family. She was able to snap out of it and join the searchers at base camp. The police continued their investigation by trying to locate and interview everybody at the bar the night Amber went missing. I have already shared a few of the details discovered from these interviews, but nothing was discovered at the time that could point investigators in the right direction. Gwenda had requested a female First Nations officer to be her point of contact with police, and this was granted. This officer was there to assist and support Gwenda and the rest of her family with any needs or requests that they had. This officer was also respectful of the family's traditions and ceremonies. Gwenda always remained near her phone in case Amber were to call, and she kept a full tank of gas so she could pick her up whenever and wherever. But this call would never come, and the search was called off after 3 weeks. The family would continue to conduct searches and hold marches to bring awareness to her case until it was discovered what had actually happened to Amber. Rumors immediately began to swirl around the community about what happened to her. Many of these rumors came from the nearby Little Black Bear First Nation, which was about 50 miles away from Fort Qu'Appelle. Residents there had heard Amber was buried somewhere on the reserve, and many said that they knew who killed her. Amber's family also claimed that the Little Black Bear leadership was aware of the rumors and who was involved and did not alert investigators of what they knew because they were protecting one of their members. This is something that Black Bear denies. But nobody would come forward to speak with police about what they heard, and Amber's case would be cold for almost 3 years. But this did not stop investigators. Most of the rumors led to a man named Albert Patrick Bellegarde. He had a criminal record that included an incident in the year 2000 involving a 50-year-old woman. He had stolen her van and discharged a shotgun at her, and her face was sprayed with shotgun pellets. She survived but was deeply traumatized by this incident. When this happened, Albert was awaiting sentencing for a sexual assault in the year 1999. He was drinking with a woman and he raped and sodomized her. For these two crimes, Albert received a 4-year prison sentence. He was eventually released, and a short time later, Amber went missing from Trapper's Bar. But there was absolutely no proof that Albert had anything to do with this, and Amber's body was not located. This led investigators to use undercover officers to get close to Albert by claiming they were gang leaders who wanted to initiate him. But first he had to confess to a major crime that he did, and Albert would lead these undercover officers to Amber's body on May 5, 2008. While on the way to her remains, Albert bragged to the undercover officers that it felt exhilarating to kill her. After this new discovery, the police contacted Gwenda and informed her that they were doing an official search on the Little Black Bear First Nation and that there was a very good chance that they were going to find Amber's remains. A search warrant was obtained for a house that belonged to Albert's cousin named Gilbert Bellegarde. This house was also on the Little Black Bear First Nation. This house was run down and many people thought that it was abandoned, but somebody actually did live in the house. The scene where the body was found was only 5 kilometers away from his residence and next to a gravel road. Police secured the scene and the remains were sent for identification. Albert was arrested the same day and the remains were confirmed to be Amber's on May 16, 2008. Albert pled guilty to second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole for at least 15 years. Because of his plea deal, he had to openly admit what he had done in open court. And this is solely based on his words. Amber is not here to contest any non-truths or tell her side of the story. Albert said he went into Fort Qu'Appelle on July 14th with his cousin Gilbert to buy beer. They ended up at Trapper's Bar and met Amber there that night in the parking lot. They convinced Amber to go with them back to Gilbert's house, where they all drank together. Gilbert and Amber eventually went to his bedroom, where Albert later heard screams. When he entered the room, he saw Gilbert beating Amber, and it looked like she had a broken jaw. Albert claims that he did not want to get into trouble for what was going on, so he helped Gilbert beat her until she was unconscious. Albert then claims he threw her off a balcony and then wrapped her in a blanket. He proceeded to dump her in the bush, and he said that she was still alive. He then went back for a butcher's knife and jammed it through her skull. Part of Albert's confession was verified through the condition of Amber's remains. The portion of her skull where the knife entered was found, along with her broken jaw, and this confirmed that part of his story. But only about 40% of her remains were recovered. Animals had scattered her bones. But investigators could not determine if Amber had been sexually assaulted. Albert claimed that Amber was not raped and that she was only beaten. But with his criminal history, it is entirely possible that he was lying about this. Another thing that could not be determined with 100% certainty is if Amber went with Albert willingly. More than one person said it appeared that Amber may have been drugged at the bar. And when Amber left the bar, she left with her cousin's car keys and left her purse behind. Investigators also could not confirm if Gilbert Bellegarde was really involved. He remained silent about the charges pressed against him for first-degree murder. He was able to bond out of jail before trial began with strict conditions. They only had Albert's statement that said he was involved. With no actual evidence against Gilbert, the charges against him for first-degree murder were dropped in December 2008. Amber's family had read her autopsy report prior to court proceedings, but were not familiar with some of the terminology used, and they were shocked by what was revealed in court. This experience caused them further stress and traumatization. The family has expressed concern because there was not any resources for them to help deal with the trauma and grief that they endured. They have stated that social workers were available during the trial but did little to help them. During his sentencing, Albert could not look at Amber's family. He did apologize for what he had done and admitted that he could not have done it if he were sober. Although justice was served, many believe that other people were in the house the night Amber was murdered and had taken part in the killing. Many of the rumors going around said that multiple people were involved in the assault on Amber. The day after Albert was sentenced, a man approached Gwenda in a laundromat and said he was there the night Amber was killed. This angered Gwenda because they never came forward to the police, even after she made several pleas in the media for anyone to come forward with information. But to this day, no one else besides Albert has ever been convicted in relation to Amber's murder. There are many reasons why people do not come forward to the police, such as being labeled a snitch or fear of being harmed. In this case, staying silent allowed a sexual predator to remain free for years before he was caught. People who commit crimes like this need to be taken off the streets and locked away for good. Sometimes family members of these offenders will get angry when people speak out publicly about their crimes. Whether it is out of embarrassment or denial, the result is the same: silence in the voices of the victims and family who speak for them. Sexual predators must not be protected in Indian country. Everyone should be made aware of any dangers walking around in their communities. Amber and her family were honored with a statue in her likeness. This was placed in front of the Saskatoon Police Headquarters and is named Red Star Woman, which is Amber's Dakota name. It was unveiled on May 15, 2017, which was exactly 9 years after her body was found. This, ironically, was the first recognized MMIW Day, which came about to honor the life of Hannah Harris on her birthday. She was tragically murdered on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in 2013. Amber is gone, but not forgotten. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you knew Amber, please share any memories of her, and I will see you in my next video.